LGB. 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 LGB.
They say LGB everywhere I go. LGB. What it means, I don't know. LGB. Whatever it is. LGB. Come on, help me, please. Please.
Alrighty then.
Thank you. LGB.
That's let's go, Brandon. Right?
LGB.
This means let's go, Brandon.
No. LGB.
Sounds like let's go, Brandon. I guess.
LGB. All right. Let's go, Brandon.
I am Cornholio.
Chant LGB. Right wing and left wing. LGB. Go, you know the thing. LGB. If you don't sing that back. LGB. And you ain't black. LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
FJB. Let's go, Brandon.
I'm Joe Biden, and I forgot this message.
Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gunnels, joining you from Houston, Texas, this February 29th, 2024 at 9:53 a.m. Central Standard Time. Great news. The surgery that we were talking about went absolutely swimmingly, and recovery has begun. And probably tell you more about it soon, but, it's just one of those things you don't necessarily need to talk about the details of. Everybody, support this channel by going to epicthreads.tv, the home of Angel Paste, the best lotion the world has ever known, made of only food-grade plant oils. The testimonials are absolutely amazing. Go to angelpaste.com to read some testimonials. Go to epicthreads.tv to read other testimonials. You can buy it at either location. Use promo code Shapiro to pry $1 from my grasping hands. Angel Paste, your skin will drink it up. One piece today, and that is the great Joe Lange. So I'll just go ahead and get started. From badlands.substack.com, Friends in High Places. Banks Control the Political Class by Joe Lange. Who has control? Who has the power? Q told us that private banks control governments and governments control the people. Q drop number 275 of December 5th, 2017. Fly. Banks control governments. Governments control people. SA controls elected people. Soros controls organizations of people. Ready to play? Q. Everything is about control, and money is the power behind that control. In my last article, I began to focus on what I believe is the most corrupt bank in American history. Citibank has a long history of corruption, and I will share more of it in this article as we connect back to Prince Al-Walid bin Talal al-Saud. I ended my previous article with evidence that Citibank was working behind the scenes to create America's third central bank, the Federal Reserve. Citibank was the largest bank in America at the time, but controlling New York City or Wall Street doesn't compare to controlling a government and an entire economy with a centralized banking system. The amount of control that a centralized banking system gives to the cabal of elites is incredible. It gives them the power to make the rules and reap all the benefits. Citibank helped create the Federal Reserve System and was rewarded for doing so. A new provision in the Federal Reserve Act allowed American banks to open up branches in foreign countries. That's what helped Citibank become the behemoth that it is today. Their corruption was now allowed to spread worldwide. This would mark a sad day in history because many countries would now suffer at the hands of one of the most corrupt banks in the world. Citibank controlled our government and would now use that power and control to enrich themselves at the expense of weaker countries. I would like to share some history of just one of those countries that fell victim to Citibank. It was targeted by them and has never recovered. It is still oppressed today and is one of the poorest countries in the world. Poverty was forced on them and they had no choice. It is really heartbreaking. Oppression. Noun. An unjust or cruel exercise of authority or power, or something that oppresses, especially in being an unjust or excessive exercise of power. Most of us have no idea what real oppression looks like because we haven't really experienced it. Who has? A country that has been targeted by the cabal throughout its history. According to the New York Times, quote, in the drowsy hours of a December afternoon, 8 American Marines strolled into the headquarters of Haiti's National Bank and walked out with $500,000 in gold packed in wooden boxes. They drove the loot by wagon to the shore, past American soldiers in civilian clothes who kept watch along the route. Once at the water, they loaded the boxes and sped to an awaiting gunboat. The gold was in the vault of a Wall Street bank within days. End quote. The gold was taken from Haiti's National Bank and deposited in a Wall Street bank within days. Can you guess which Wall Street bank? More from the New York Times, quote, the operation took place in 1914, a precursor to the full-scale invasion of Haiti. American forces took over the country the following summer and ruled it with brute force for 19 years, one of the longest military occupations in American history, even after the soldiers left in 1934. Haiti remained under the control of American financial officers who pulled the country's purse strings for another 13 years. Invading Haiti was necessary, the United States said. The country was so poor and unstable, the explanation went, that if the United States didn't take over, some other power would, in America's backyard, no less, end quote. The oppression of smaller and weaker countries is always portrayed as a matter of national security. It is just a narrative excuse, and usually a lie. Haiti posed no threat to the United States. The truth is, our government and military have been used as puppets by the elite bankers to oppress people all over the world. Haiti had fought and won their freedom from France. They were no longer a slave state and became the first black nation to win their freedom. I believe that is why they were targeted by the cabal. More from the New York Times, quote, but decades of diplomatic correspondence, financial reports, and archival records reviewed by the New York Times show that behind the public explanations, another hand was hard at work as well, pushing the United States to step in and seize control of Haiti for the wealth it promised. Wall Street, and especially the bank that later became Citigroup. Under heavy pressure from National City Bank, Citigroup's predecessor, the Americans elbowed the French aside and became the dominant power in Haiti for decades to come. The United States dissolved Haiti's parliament at gunpoint, killed thousands of people, controlled its finances for more than 30 years, shipped a big portion of its earnings to bankers in New York, and left behind a country so poor that the farmers who helped generate the profits often lived on a diet close to starvation level, United Nations officials determined in 1949, soon after the Americans let go of the reins. End quote. Money equals power and control. Back in 1914, after helping to establish the third central bank in America, Citibank took control of Haiti in order to strip the country of its wealth. They used our military to do it. Our government was once again controlled by private bankers. Why did our military dissolve the parliament in Haiti? Because Haiti refused to change its constitution to allow foreigners to own their land. So, we dissolved their government at gunpoint. Citibank then took over large portions of their land and forced the Haitians to work the land for little to nothing as the profits flowed right back to New York City. Citibank controlled the currency too. So they forced the government of Haiti into taking huge loans that kept them trapped in a debt system that oppressed the entire country for years. How oppressive were their loans? More from the New York Times. In its filing to a Senate Finance Committee in 1932, National City Bank said it secured one of its largest margins during the 1920s from a debt it controlled in Haiti. Little of that history remains part of Citigroup's public profile today. Haiti is barely mentioned in its official timeline. The company declined to provide access to its archives and said it was unable to find any information on some of its biggest loans to Haiti, end quote. The truth is sometimes a horrible thing. The hidden enemy always tries to hide their true history. Citibank ruined Haiti, and Haiti has never recovered. They have tried to hide that history, and I bet most people don't know anything about it. The Clintons would play later an even worse role in Haiti's history, and so did George W. Bush, but I'll leave that for a future article. Q told us that when the whole truth comes out about Haiti, it will change everything, and I believe it will unite this country. This was one of the earliest Q drops for a reason. Q drop number 9 of October 29th, 2017. Projection. D's can't lose control over the black population. At some point, the Great Awakening will occur, whereby these false local, national black leaders are corrupt and paid off to help keep the black population poor and in need. D's formed the Confederate States against freeing slaves. D's formed the KKK. HRC's mentor is who? What happens if the truth about Haiti is released? Do D's lose majority of the vote through the looking glass? They rely on the MSM to keep the narrative going, but tech is entrenching on their controls. They missed this in 2016 and desperately attempting to censor now due to CIA cash infusions. This will fail. I am purposely leaving some of the worst history in Haiti until the end of this series. I think for many of those who are just waking up to this evil, it might come as a shock and may prevent them from accepting the truth. Citibank was at the forefront of the oppression of this country, but there's another part of Citibank's history in Haiti that reveals corruption on a larger scale. It marks another way the cabal of bankers stripped the wealth from countries and impoverished the people. It started with taking over the Haiti National Bank. More from the New York Times. Quote, soon after it was set up, the new national bank did what its predecessor had, charged the government for every deposit and expense while generating big profits for its shareholders abroad. It also issued a loan to the Haitian government. After commissions and profits were deducted, Haiti received about $9 million, but still had to pay the full face value of nearly $12.3 million, end quote. Citibank forced a predatory loan on the government of Haiti, which gave Citibank huge profits and made debt slaves of the Haitian population. But Citibank didn't just control the government and the Bank of Haiti. They also controlled something else. What was it? More from the New York Times. Quote, the invasion followed a detailed plan that the United States Navy had drawn up the previous year. American soldiers took over the presidential office and the customs houses that handled import and export taxes. The Americans installed a puppet government, and by that fall, Haiti had signed a treaty giving the United States full financial control. The United States appointed American officials whom they called advisors, but the term hardly conveyed their true power. They oversaw Haiti's revenue collection and approved or denied its expenses. Martial law became the rule of the land. Private newspapers were muzzled and journalists jailed. The people of Haiti had their gold stolen, were invaded, then had a puppet government installed that gave the United States full financial control. Martial law was established and the media was suppressed. They were forced into debt slavery by the U.S. government, which was partially controlled by Citibank. They've never recovered. But did you catch how Citibank took control of all the commerce in Haiti? They took control of the customs houses that collected import and export taxes. Do you know how much control that gives the cabal over a country? Citibank completely controlled commerce in Haiti. Customs houses are the centralized focal point for collecting tariffs for international trade. Customs houses control commerce internationally. Whoever controls them also controls trade, and we are talking about huge sums of money. Not surprisingly, the amount of graft and corruption is bigger than most people realize. Citibank already had experience controlling customs houses and the power that came with that control. Guess which country's custom house Citibank controlled before they ever controlled Haiti? Have you ever heard of the United States Custom House? Do you know the early history of this customs house and where it was located? The Custom House, New York, 1799 to 1815. According to Wikipedia, quote, the United States Custom House, sometimes referred to as the New York Custom House, was the place where the United States Customs Service collected federal customs duties on imported goods within New York City, end quote. Citibank at the time was the biggest bank in New York City and controlled a lot of things, including the politicians that would appoint the leaders of the custom house. Controlling international trade is a massive moneymaker for the cabal. I don't think people understand the real reason Trump was going after these crooked trade deals and how much money is stolen through graft and corruption. A huge amount of money meant to fund governments around the world is stolen through custom houses, and nobody is keeping track of it. How important was this customs house in New York City? More from Wikipedia. Quote, in the 19th century, the port of New York was the primary port of entry for goods reaching the United States, and as such, the custom house in New York was the most important in the country. In 1853, for instance, it collected about almost 75% of the custom revenue in the country, end quote. The United States Custom House in New York was the primary port for most imports coming to America in the 19th century, and it was collecting up to 75% of the entire country's import taxes at the time. That is a lot of money. Remember, back then, import and export duties were the main funding source for the federal government. More from Wikipedia, quote, until the passage of the 16th Amendment in 1913, which instituted a national income tax, the New York Custom House supplied 2/3 of the federal government's revenue. The amount of money passing through the Custom House made working there a prime position, and corruption was widespread, end quote. Before the creation of the federal income tax, the government was collecting tariffs to fund itself. The New York Custom House was supplying the federal government with 2/3 of their entire revenue. That was a lot of government money flowing through one custom house in New York City. There was rampant corruption, and the people in charge were political appointees. The same politicians controlled by Citibank were handpicking the people running the custom house. There have been estimates that upwards of $25 million was being lost a year in revenue way back then. I don't think it was a coincidence that President James Garfield was assassinated after trying to cleanse the corruption at the Custom House of New York. According to whitehouse.gov, quote, James Garfield was elected as the United States' 20th president in 1880 after 9 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives. His presidency was impactful, but cut short after 200 days when he was assassinated. As president, Garfield strengthened federal authority over the New York Customs House stronghold of Senator Roscoe Conkling, who was leader of the stalwart Republicans and dispenser of patronage in New York. End quote. President Garfield knew how the patronage system worked in New York City, so he tried to place Senator Conkling's bitter rival in charge of the Custom House in order to remove Conkling's power. More from whitehouse.gov, quote, Conkling contested the nomination, tried to persuade the Senate to block it, and appealed to the Republican caucus to compel its withdrawal. But Garfield would not submit. This will settle the question. Whether the president is registering clerk of the Senate or the executive of the United States, shall the principal port of entry be under the control of the administration or under the control of a factional senator? End quote. President Garfield was trying to remove the Wall Street control of the Custom House that was supplying nearly 2/3 of the federal government's revenues. He was assassinated for it, and guess who then became president? Vice President Chester Arthur. Arthur became vice president as a compromise on the ticket, and he just happened to be a protege of Senator Conkling. This was the same Conkling who had also appointed Chester Arthur to be in charge of the Custom House of New York, where he was the highest paid federal employee before becoming vice president and then president after Garfield's assassination. Do you think that's just a coincidence? Citibank has a long history of owning and controlling politicians in the United States, and we've seen how that gave them advantages, helped them control monopolies, and use the government and military to do their bidding in order to constantly increase their wealth. It is always about the money, and they have destroyed other countries in order to steal their wealth. Greed has no limits. What other events in our history has Citibank been responsible for? Did you know that Citibank played a huge part in the market crash of 1929, which triggered the Great Depression? One man in particular got a lot of the blame. I bet you've never heard of Sunshine Charlie Mitchell. Charlie Mitchell was named by Senator Carter Glass as one of the main people behind the crash. According to Wikipedia, quote, Charles Edwin Mitchell, October 6, 1877 to December 14, 1955, was an American banker whose incautious securities policies facilitated the speculation which led to the crash of 1929. First National City Bank's, now Citibank, controversial activities under his leadership were a major contributing factor in the passage of the Glass-Steagall Act. In 1933, the U.S. Senate's Pecora Commission investigated Mitchell as its first witness for his part in tens of millions of dollars in losses, excessive pay, and tax avoidance. In November 1929, U.S. Senator Carter Glass said, quote, Mitchell, more than any 50 men, is responsible for this stock crash, end quote. Citibank caused the market crash and was the very reason that the Glass-Steagall Act was passed. What was the Glass-Steagall Act? According to History.com, quote, the Glass-Steagall Act, part of the Banking Act of 1933, was a landmark banking legislation that separated Wall Street from Main Street by offering protection to people who entrust their savings to commercial banks. Millions of Americans lost their jobs in the Great Depression, and 1 in 4 lost their life savings after more than 4,000 U.S. banks shut down between 1929 and 1933, leaving depositors with nearly $400 million in losses. The Glass-Steagall Act prohibited bankers from using depositors' money to pursue high-risk investments, but the act was effectively undercut by looser restrictions in the deregulatory environment of the 1980s and 1990s. The Glass-Steagall Act set up a firewall between commercial banks, which accept deposits and issue loans, and investment banks that negotiate the sale of bonds and stocks. End quote. The Glass-Steagall Act was a great safeguard and was written into law in order to protect the American people's savings and prevent the collapse of our commercial banking system. It prevented Wall Street banks from getting control of depositors' money so they could invest in risky schemes. But don't miss that last part. The Glass-Steagall Act was undercut by politicians pushing deregulation in the 1980s and 1990s. That would directly lead to another financial crisis, but I'll come back to that story. Congressional investigators looking into the market crash that caused the Great Depression found some interesting scams by these banks. More from History.com. Quote, part of the problem, as Pecora and his investigative team revealed, was that banks could lend money to a company and then issue stock in that same company without revealing to shareholders the bank's underlying conflict of interest. If that company then failed, the bank suffered no losses, while its investors were left holding the bag. End quote. I'm going to let everybody let that sink in. I'm going to read that again. Part of the problem, as Pecora and his investigative team revealed, was that banks could lend money to a company and then issue stock in that same company without revealing to shareholders the bank's underlying conflict of interest. If that company then failed, the bank suffered no losses while its investors were left holding the bag. End quote. Can you see why it's so important to have a firewall between the commercial and the investment banks? A Wall Street bank can lend a lot of money to a favored company and then could issue stock for that same company to sell to Americans. If the company failed, and many did during the market crash of 1929, the Wall Street bank didn't suffer at all, but the little guy would lose a lot of money as the stock collapsed. This fraudulent scheme has been a template for the cabal for many years. Do you know what has been another big cabal template? Deregulation. Deregulation of the banking industry caused the savings and loan scandal that enriched the Bush family and their cronies back in the 1980s. Deregulation also helped the Salinas family in Mexico to launder billions in drug cartel money. They were intimo amigos with the Bush family. The Glass-Steagall Act was put in place to protect the American people's savings from Wall Street crooks. Deregulation rendered that safeguard useless when Bill Clinton became president and signed the Financial Services Modernization Act into law. The Financial Services Modernization Act was authored by a Republican who was hailed as one of the biggest conservatives in Congress. Who was he? Do you remember Phil Gramm, the senator from Texas? He led the charge to deregulate the banking system and allow investment banks once again to sell risky securities to the American people at commercial banks. You'll never guess where Phil Gramm went to work after he left Congress. He became vice chairman of UBS Investment Bank. The banks control our government. The politicians do their bidding and then are rewarded with high-paying jobs at the banks when they leave office. It's a rigged system. How did this gutting of the Glass-Steagall Act affect our financial system? We've had two big market crashes since, and in my opinion, we are on the verge of a third one. The first was the dot-com bubble. Remember that one? It happened in the year 2000 when euphoria by Americans to invest their hard-earned savings into any new company with a dot-com behind their name was being pushed by media controlled by the big Wall Street banks that were making a whole lot of money in IPOs for companies that wouldn't exist a few years later. A lot of these new companies weren't making any profits, and it was all speculation over their futures. Some companies like Oracle and Amazon grew into huge companies, but most didn't. I want to focus on one company that some people in this community might remember. It was a company that failed spectacularly, but made a handful of people very wealthy. Do you remember Global Crossing? It was a company that aimed to lay a lot of high-speed internet cable worldwide. Its CEO made a killing, selling a lot of stock before the crash, but so did a really good friend of President Clinton. His name was Terry McAuliffe, and McAuliffe sold his stock in Global Crossing before the crash and would use those massive profits to help the Clintons buy their mansion in Chappaqua, New York, after they left the White House. McAuliffe would then become the governor of Virginia. As for all the little people who owned stock in the company and believed the lies about its potential, they lost everything. The lie being told by the media was that these dot-com companies would be successful because the internet was new, and this innovation was going to lead the market much higher. Normal, everyday Americans who knew nothing about investing or trading were afraid to miss out and were buying right into the height of the bubble. This is the cabal template that the Wall Street banks keep using over and over to steal the wealth from ordinary Americans. The same thing happened in 2008. In the 2008 financial crisis, it was the housing market. Americans were being told that the real estate prices would continue to go up forever, and that you didn't even need an income to purchase a house. Housing prices rose sharply and created a phony wealth effect that led to the euphoria all the while. Citibank and Wall Street were packaging and selling the garbage mortgage loans that were either behind or underwater into securities to be sold all over the world. They also rated them as AAA, which meant they had little to no risk. We all remember how that ended. What is the narrative forming around the market bubble today? AI is going to drive every company involved in AI higher, and people need to get in now. We have seen that the entire market rally recently is based on this lie, and it is being led by only 7 stocks in the NASDAQ. This market bubble will burst like the others, and unfortunately, a lot of Americans are going to lose their savings again. This template of bundling and then selling high-risk securities to ordinary Americans started with Citibank, and that's what caused the market crash of 1929. More from History.com. Quote, in a series of sensational hearings, Pecora exposed the deeds of people like Charles Mitchell, head of the largest bank in America, National City Bank, now Citibank, who made more than $1 million in bonuses in 1929, but paid 0 taxes. National City Bank testimony uncovered had taken on bundles of bad loans, packaged them as securities, and unloaded them on unsuspecting customers. Meanwhile, a top executive of Chase National Bank, a precursor of today's J.P. Morgan Chase, had gotten rich by short-selling his company's shares during the 1929 stock market crash. In testimony from financier J.P. Morgan, the public learned that Morgan had issued stocks at discounted rates to a small circle of privileged clients, including former President Calvin Coolidge. Pecora's hearings captivated and increasingly disgusted American public, which began to refer to these men as banksters, a term coined to refer to financial leaders who had put the nation's economy at risk while pocketing profits. End quote. These banksters purposely put the nation's economy at risk in order to increase profits. They do it over and over again because they only get richer and have never been sent to prison or hanged. I just added that. Charlie Mitchell made more than $1 million in bonuses back in 1929 as the market was about to crash, and he was cheering on the speculation, even lending out millions to stockbrokers to keep the party going. He also paid no taxes and was later prosecuted for it, but then acquitted. The banksters never face consequences. They are untouchable. Did you catch that Charlie Mitchell was taking bundles of bad loans and packaging them to sell as securities, then selling them to unsuspecting customers? Does that sound familiar? That was exactly what the banks like Citibank were doing in 2008 when they used a real estate bubble to cause a global credit crisis and then received the biggest bailouts in world history. They packaged all the bad loans that were underperforming or underwater and slapped a AAA rating on them, then sold them to everyone around the world, including pension funds. Citibank was the author of that fraudulent scheme that became a template again for crooked banks in 2008. Remember, Citibank was now an international bank and could sell these bundles of bad loans as securities around the world. And they did. Removing the Glass-Steagall Act allowed Citibank to merge with another big financial institution and become Citigroup. That would directly lead to the global financial crisis of 2008. That's why Citigroup got the biggest bailout. According to the New York Times, quote, "After all, there have been many books about the 2008 financial crisis and how various Wall Street banks did or did not survive it. But there has never been an accounting of how Citigroup got itself into so much trouble and why the decisions were made to bail it out to the tune of, as the authors reveal, more than $517 billion all told, some $40 billion more than the roughly $476 billion in cash and guarantees described in a 2011 congressional report," end quote. This New York Times article is a review of a book titled Borrowed Time by authors James Freeman and Vern McKinley that talks about the many bailouts of Citibank. More from the New York Times, quote, "None of this would have happened if only the Glass-Steagall Act, the Depression-era law separating commercial banking from investment banking, had never been repealed in 1999. The repeal allowed for the blockbuster merger of Citibank and Travelers, which owned Salomon Brothers and Smith Barney, two investment banks, and created Citigroup in the first place. They also had a compelling thesis through which to explore why the feds bailed out Citigroup in 2008, that throughout the bank's 206-year history, it has often teetered on the edge of financial ruin, only to be rescued repeatedly by friends in high places," end quote. Friends in high places. Citibank has been a cabal bank from its inception, and it has had powerful political connections throughout its history. Those friends in high places would rescue Citibank every time it got into financial trouble because of risky investments with no questions asked. But there is one friend of Citibank above all others who has connections to so many things. Q gave us a hint in drop number 134 of November 11th, 2017. Why were the events in SA extraordinary? Who was arrested? What will bank records provide? List names, family history, investment/ownership stakes, and point-to-point contacts. X. Al-Walid, Huma, B.O., Citigroup, U.S. control. Why is this relevant? House of Saud, U.S. control. Follow the money. What power shift recently occurred? Was a new king appointed? Coincidence? Dark to light. Why is this relevant? One side of the triangle removed. First time in history. Other sides falling. Plus, plus, plus. Plus, plus. Plus. Q. Al-Walid, Huma, B.O., Citigroup, U.S. control. I will begin to connect these dots in my next article on my way to proving that Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Al Saud was Trump's greatest threat the day that Trump was inaugurated. And that is the brilliant Joe Lange. Amazing piece, dude. I love every minute of it. So excited. I'm really excited about the next one, guys. Go to badlands.substack.com to check out Joe Lange. Do a paid subscription at badlands.substack.com. Do a paid purchase of Angel Paste Miracle Cream at epicthreads.tv. Don't forget to use promo code Shapiro to pry $1 out of my grasping hands. If you get more than $150 in buy more than $150 worth, you get free shipping. And then the orange is still available for pre-order. We're shipping on March 8th. That'll be the entire release of that product. I'm super excited, guys. I'm going to be doing an advertisement on the Trump rally on March 5th. Isn't that exciting? Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Just as a reminder, this is Reading Epic Threads. I do this show. I try to do it 6 days a week, every day but Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central. Let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.